Constitution provides that in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall be presumed innocent until the contrary is proved. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. How much proof is necessary? In other words, what is the standard of proof? I have adopted the very high standard of overwhelming preponderance of evidence pursuant to the recommendation of Professor Charles Black of Yale University, author of the Impeachment, considered the Bible for the whole world on impeachment process in a democracy. My standard is very high because removal by conviction on impeachment is a stunning penalty, the ruin of a life. The defendant admitted that he did not declare his dollar accounts and certain commingled peso accounts in his SAL-N. Let us begin with this threshold question. Did this omission amount to an impeachable offense? No. Under the rule of justem generis, when a general word occurs after a number of specific words, the meaning of the general word shall be limited to the kind or class of thing within which the specific words fall. The Constitution provides that the impeachable offenses are culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft and corruption, other high crimes, or betrayal of public trust. An omission in good faith in the SAL-N carries a light penalty and is even allowed by law to be corrected by the person who submitted it. Thus, it is not impeachable because it is not in the same class as the offenses enumerated in the Constitution. If we disregard this rule of justem generis, then we can interpret the law to mean anything as long as the enumeration of specific words is followed by general word. Wala nang limitasyon yon. Pag sinabi pala ng Constitution, other high crimes or betrayal of public trust, wala na palang limitasyon yon. Iyan, kung hindi ka nag-aaral ng batas. Sabi ng batas, you apply the rule of justem generis. Kailangan may listahan na isa-isa nilang sinasabi kung anong kasalanan at merong isang salita na hindi mo malaman kung anong kasalanan, dapat basahin mo yan na pare-pareho doon sa kasalanan na nalista na. In other words, it should belong to the same class. Does omission in the SAL-N belong to the same class as, for example, treason, bribery, etc.? The Constitution simply provides that a public officer shall submit a declaration under oath of his assets, liabilities, and net worth. I am quoting the Constitution. That is all. There are no details. The Constitution is a brief declaration of fundamental principles. Many constitutional provisions are only commands to the Congress to enact laws to carry out the purpose of the Charter. As a general rule, constitutional provisions are not self-executory. Hindi naman pwede na basahin mong Constitution na para ka bang nagbasa ng dyaryo tapos kanya-kanya kayong interpretasyon. Hindi ganon yun. Kaya meron tayong constitutional law, which is said to be the most difficult subject to pass in the entire College of Law. Hindi ganon kadali magbasa ng Constitution. Constitutional analysis is a field of art in itself. It is a technical field. Kaya 4 na taon ang abogasiya. Eh kung mas kasino lang pala pwede mag-interpret ng Constitution, bakit pa tayo may mga abogado na kanya-kanya na lang? The usual exceptions are the Bill of Rights, yan, self-executory yan, basahin mo, sundin mo. And constitutional provision, pag sinabi ng batas, hindi pwede ito, yan, sundin mo kaagad. Pero lahat, hindi mo pwedeng masunod kaagad-agad. Mag-antay ka kung anong batas ang ipapasa ng Kongreso. Wala kaming ginagawa sa Kongreso kung hindi mag-antay kung anong sinabi ng Constitution. That is the main function of legislation. All other constitutional provisions, such as the SAL provision, need implementing laws to provide the details. Hence, Congress, to implement this constitutional provision, has passed a number of laws, including the Foreign Currency Act, which confers absolute confidentiality on dollar deposits. Nakikinig lang ako noon, sa mga argumento na the Foreign Currency Act violates the Constitution. I was already hoping with all my heart that God would strike me dead. Mabuti pang mamatay ako bilang isang abogada nang sa makikinig ako ng mga rason na ganon. Wala yan sa libro, wala yan dito, wala yan doon. Para bang hindi ka nagbasa ng batas mo. Di ibig mo sabihin wala na palang batas na nag-iiral sa mga trial na ito. Kundi kanya-kanya ng isipan. There is no conflict between the Constitution and the Foreign Currency Act. The perceived conflict is so simplistic that it is seriously laughable. Nakakatawa ka o nagpapatawa ka. If there is any conflict, it is between the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards on the one hand, which provides for a waiver of confidentiality, and the Foreign Currency Act on the other hand, which provides for absolute confidentiality. Kaya sinusunod natin ang batas sa konstitusyon, pero ang batas na pinairal ng Kongreso mukhang may conflict. Pero hindi mo masabi na the Constitution is clear, so the Constitution will of course prevail over an ordinary law. Ano namang klaseng kagaguhan yan? Galit kayo dahil ginabit ko ang salita na kagaguhan? Ay, repeat, kagaguhan yan. Why do you study law if that is your opinion? At bakit matawagin na quasi judicial itong proceedings na ito? If it's all purely political and anyone can have his own opinion. It is for Congress to balance on the one hand the need for public accountability from public officers with, on the other hand, the desperate need for foreign investment, which entails confidentiality on pain of driving away investors from our country. Yan ang rason kung bakit meron tayong Foreign Currency Deposit Act. Dahil gusto natin na paratingin ang foreign investment at walang foreign investor. I promise you na darating kung merong bayan na may batas pala na lahat ng dolyar mo, ideklara mo. Walang darating maski isa. That is the purpose of that law. Did anybody of you bother to find out why we have a Currency Deposit Act? Puro lang tingin ninyo tungkol sa impeachment. I-parking mong pera mo dyan. Mamaya, isasalungat ko yung mga argumento ninyong yan. It makes me angry as a former law professor and as a future judge of the International Criminal Court that you should presume to administer justice in this manner. I am insulted by the way your minds run. It is for Congress. The argument that the dollar deposit protected from inquiry would nullify the principle of transparency is for Congress to resolve. Ay di tayo, kayo sa House at kami sa Senate, tayo ang gumawa niyan, tayo ngayon ang may problema. Dibigyan natin ng solusyon ng problema. We could retain the absolute confidentiality clause with the amendment that Filipino public officers are not protected. Yun ang dapat gagawin natin. The prosecution mistakes admission for confession. In law, in a confession, the defendant admits his guilt. In an admission, the defendant merely states facts which might tend to prove his guilt. In the instant case, the defendant did not make a confession but merely an admission with a legal defense. As a former RTC judge, I find it reprehensible beyond belief that the AMLA document was introduced in evidence without authentication as required by the rules of evidence. Nagpapanggapan pa tayo na korte tayong quasi-judicial. Yun pala, sinabi pa natin na if there is any need, we shall use as a supplementary authority the rules of court. Ayun pala, hindi natin susundin ang rules of evidence. Hindi ka pwedeng magdala maski anong papel sa korte. I-authenticate mo. Kung hindi mo intindi kung anong authenticate, di huwag kang mag-abogado dyan. I am deeply disappointed that on at least 3 occasions, the prosecution claimed that these documents came from an anonymous source. Strike me dead. 3 times is just too much coincidence. Are you for real prosecution? Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one thing, false in all things. The defendant used his own name in all his question transactions. He could have done otherwise if his purpose was invisibility. Kung ayaw niyang matuklasan, kadali-dali. Di gamitin niya pangalan ng iba. Lahat naman kayo, hindi naman lahat. Marami sa atin dito, kung tungkol na sa batas, ibang pangalan na ginagamit. Sigurado ako niyan. mo manufacture sa Pilipinas. Minsan, binigyan pa nga ako ng death certificate ng kusado. Pagkatapos, pinahuli ko, huling-huli, buhay na buhay. Ganon ang ating korte dito. Huwag niyo kong padara ng kalukuhan ninyo dahil alam na alam ko yon. Kayo, nag-practice kayo, 1 taon, 2 taon. Ako, RTC judge. Why would a suspected criminal leave his calling cards at the scene of the crime? Kung noon pa, gusto pala niyang itago ang kayamanan niya, bakit niya ilagay sa pangalan niya? Marami dito sa Pilipinas naglalagay sa ibang papangalan ng ibang tao. Hindi kaya alam ng abogado yon? May master's pa sa Harvard, may doctorate pa sa UST. Ganun kaya siya katanga? Assuming for the sake of argument that there is a preponderance of evidence for the prosecution, the preponderance is not overwhelming. Yan ang Ingles. Inada ko para sa 2 minutes ko. Wala pala kaming limitasyon. Ngayon, Tagalog naman. At hingi na ako ng paumanhin, abansi pa lang. Dahil kulang na kulang Tagalog ko. Unang punto. Kung matalo ang Chief Justice dito, di ang ibig sabihin pala, ang mga nananalo ay mga honest na tao. Dahil kinundina nila dahil corrupt yung taong yon. Di, palagay din natin na itong mga representante, dahil lahat tayo, we represent the people, isn't that so? That's why we're elected officers. We're supposed to represent our constituencies. Kung hatulan natin may sala yan, di, ibig lang dahil crooked siya, di ibig lang sabihin tayo, honest tayo. Ngayon, kung lahat pala tayo honest, o marami pala tayo sa atin ay honest, why is the Philippines often, or if not all the time, why is the Philippines always ranked as one of the most corrupt countries in the whole world? Yan, sagutin niyo ako niyan. Nagpapakalinis kayo? Aba kung malinis pala ang mga opisyalis natin at malinis pala sa buong bansa, bakit palagi tayong nililista ng Transparency International as one of the most corrupt countries in the world? Magtitingnan tayo? Sino kaya dito? Yan ang unang punto ko. Pangalawa, tumigil na kayo ng kapapangkapan nyo, mga artista. Merong mga politiko na alam natin kung anong loopholes nila sa SALN. Deposito ang sinasabi ng batas, pagkatapusan ng Disyembre, katapusan ng taon, magdeklara ka kung magkanong pera mo sa bangko. Hindi ba withdraw nila pera nila sa buwan na Nobyembre o Disyembre? Para pag naglagay sila, pag nag-file sila ng SALN nila, wala nga silang deposito. O kaya meron lang sila ng couple of thousands. Kasi withdraw nila Pag Enero, i-deposit nila uli. Taong bayan, kayo ang magtestigo. Yan. Ba't hindi natin habulin yung ganon? Pangalawa, palusot. O pangalawa, na ginagawa nila na loophole sa SALN. Lahat ng pag-ari nila, real estate, bank accounts, iba pang pag-ari, lalagay sa ibang pangalan. Yan is very, very widespread. O di wala na naman silang pag-ari. Dahil lahat, linagay na nila sa ibang pangalan. Kung bawal ang asawa at ang mga anak, dahil sa batas ay inspeksyonin pati yan, yung mga malapit sa kanila. Di doon sa mga malalayo na mga kamag-anak. O kaya maski hindi kamag-anak, sa kaibigan na pinagkakatiwalaan nila. What a hypocritical accusation. That is a problem with this country. We're all for honest government, and yet the world condemns us as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. That's why it is difficult to win in any international election, in any international campaign, because the Philippines, among others, has a reputation of being a corrupt country. Isip ng iba, kung corrupt ang bayan na yan, walang matinong lalabas dyan. Walang matinong ibubunga yan. Bawat isa pa sa inyo, walang sala tungkol sa SALN? Bigyan nyo ako ng isa pang buhay. Panginoon, bigyan mo ako ng isa pang buhay at imbestigahin ko lahat. Isa-isa. Dito sa Senado at sa House of Representatives, tignan natin. Pati sarili ko, imbestigahin ko.
Order, please.
daming loopholes ng SALN na yan. Ba't hindi kayo umimik noon? Ba't ngayon bigla na lang kayong so exercised about a loophole? Well, if that is the case, then let us all just put our assets in dollars and know the purpose of the SALN will be perverted or corrupted. That is true. But what about all the other loopholes? Bakit ngayon lang kayo nagalit tungkol sa loophole na yan? Bakit doon pa? Dahil yung iba sa atin, dinagamit yung mismong loopholes na yon. Hindi lang sila ma-impeach. Sunod na punto. Sinabi ko sa umpisa, this is quasi-judicial and this is quasi-political. Yan, aminado yan ng mga authors. Si Professor Charles Black ng Yale, si Professor Raoul Berger ng Harvard. Mga tinitingala yan ng mga authorities all over the world. Ngayon, this is quasi-judicial. Ibig sabihin, kalahati niyan politika. Kalahati yan batas. Napakahirap gawin yan. Ngayon, ako, dahil naging RTC judge, ang ginagamit ko lang ang batas. Wala akong ginagamit sa pampolitika dahil hindi na ako makatakbo ulit. Natawag na ako ng International Criminal Court. Wala na akong kinabukasan sa politika sa Pilipinas. Even if I wanted to, I am prohibited because this is already my second term, consecutive term. Ngayon, ano ba ang sinasabi na quasi-political? Investigahin nga natin for future impeachments. Anong sinasabi na quasi-judicial, quasi-political? Madaling intindihin ang quasi-judicial. Kalahati niyan tungkol sa hustisya o tungkol sa batas. Pero kalahati yan tungkol sa politika. Anong ibig sabihin ng tungkol sa politika? Tungkol sa politika, dahil ang ibig sabihin dyan, pag-isipan mo at pakinggan mo ang mga taong bumoto sa iyo. That is actually the meaning of quasi-political. Because the people might disagree with what the law says. Yun ang pakikinggan mo. That is the meaning of quasi-political. Hindi ibig sabihin quasi-political na buboto ka, ulit bibigyan ka ng mamahaling proyekto sa public works na kung saan maaaring kumita ka. Alam naman natin yan. Kung magkano ang halaga ng public works mo, 10% punta sa iyo kung gusto mo. Hindi iyon ang ibig sabihin na politika. At hindi ibig sabihin na quasi-political na isipin mo, nako, tatakbo ako. Either for re-election or for another position, or I need some position in government for my kalyado ko, who I will use as my dummy. That is not the meaning of quasi-political.
I request the lady to wind up this.
I thought that I was unlimited. I prepared a 2-minute paper, but I will obey the injunction. Tsaka, isang punto. Nang nagtapos magpresenta ng ebidensyang prosecution, naglabas ng mga survey ng mga tao gusto pala na guilty ang Chief Justice. Ngayon natapos ang depensa, saan yun ang mga survey? Wala. Huli sa lahat at pinakamalaga, anong magiging, hindi lang importante kung anong magiging desisyon natin ngayong hapon, anong magiging katuparan, anong susunod sa ating desisyon. Ulit ba mananalo tayo sa botohan? Panalo na tayo sa masa na nakakarami sa ating bansa. And we follow the rule of the majority. Sa kabataan sa pamantasan, dahil they're an educated constituency, sa kaysaysayan ng ating bansa, this will go down in history. Nagtrabaho ako abroad. Nagka-cancer ang tatay ko. Bumalik ako. Sabi ng tatay ko, mag-resign ka nga dyan sa trabaho mong yan. Wala kang silbi sa bayan mo. Magsilbi ka sa sarili mong kababayan. Nagsilbing na nga ako. Pero kung ang politika ay mangigibabaw sa batas, wala na rin akong silbi. Bayan, kayo ang maghatol sa ginagawa dito sa impeachment trial.
What's your vote?
Would you be very surprised if I say that I vote not guilty? Magsasabi lang ako ng kalahating totoo. Yung iba, ililihim po. Hindi naman ganun eh. Buong katotohanan. Paano ka magsumpa na buong katotohanan sasabihin mo at ngayon sasabihin mo sa akin, masasangkot ako kaya ayaw ko tang sagutin. Yun ang ginagawa mo sa akin eh. O, ngayon. Ikaw ba'y nakipagpulong sa isang abogado o mga abogado tungkol sa sabihin mo ngayon? Binigyan ka kaninang 30 minutes eh, di ba?
Opo.
O maliban dyan, yung dati mong abogado, si Attorney Lorna Kapunan,
Opo.
nakusap din kayo.
Opo.
Sino pa? Maliban dito sa mga abogadong ito, o yung isang abogadong maring si Attorney Villa Senior. Pero maliban dyan, sino pang kausap mo tungkol sa plunder case?
Wala na po.
Wala kang kinausap? Yung senador?
Ay, wala po.
Sigurado ka ha?
Wala po.
Mamaya paliwanag ko nakamali ka. Ikaw ba ay nag-attend ng mga meetings at nandyan ang mga testigo at nagpirmahan kayo? Pag anong sasabihin ninyo?
I invoke my right po.
Okay. Ikaw ba ay nagbasa ng iba pang mga mababasa mo para maganda ng iyong sasabihin ngayon?
Wala po.
Wala? Hindi ka nagbasa o hindi ka marunong?
Wala po.
Okay? Ikaw ba ay gumawa ng mga nota sa isang notebook tungkol dito sa mga sinasabing pagbibintang sa iyo tungkol sa plunder? Wala kang notes ng ganon?
Wala po.
At minasa mo bang affidavit at iba pang mga statements or affidavits na ginawa ng mga whistleblowers?
Wala po. Wala po kaming kopya.
Alright. O, nakita mo na. Sabi ko na eh. Sasagutin mo lang ako with a blank wall. Anong alam mo? Nakadedma ka sa akin. Paano tayo ngayon makaabot sa katotohanan? Hindi bale. Question. Next question. That's one set of questions. Pinagbadali-dali ko lang dahil alam ko ng sagot mo eh. I invoke my right. Ngayon tingnan natin. Mrs. Napoles, napaliwanag na ito sa iyo ng abogado mo. Pero hayaan mo sana ako na paliwanag ulit sa iyo. Anong ibig sabihin ng maging state witness? Kung ikaw ay nakusa na demanda ng isang krimen, natural magbista ka, hatulan ka, kung found guilty ka, mapipresyo ka, magbabayad ka ng isang multa, no? Ganon, hindi ba? Ngayon, hindi ka makalusot pag may ginawa kang krimen, maliban lang kung ikaw ay tinatawag na state witness. E biro mo, bigat ng demanda sa iyo. Punishable by 20 to 40 years imprisonment. Sinabi yan sa iyo ng abogado mo, sigurado ako. Mga 50 years old ka pa lang eh. Plus 20, 70 ka na paglabas mo. Plus 20 years old, plus 20 years, 50 plus 20, maging 70 ka, no? 50 plus 40, maging 90 ka na. Kasing tanda ka na ni tanda. Oh, ngayon lahat yan, papasukan mong gulo na yan dahil ayaw mo lang na magsabi ng totoo. Pinoproteksyonan mo ang tao na baka siya ang pinaka-guilty. Ang dapat sa iyo, kung abogado mong nagmamalasakit para sa iyo, ay pag umabot ka na sa korte, maghihingi ang abogado mo na ang korte papayag na gawin kang state witness. Ang ibig sabihin, basta sabihin mong lahat ng alam mo, hindi ka makukulong. Para kang naabsuelto, para kang na-quit. Hindi ka man lang ibista eh. Wala ka ng kasalanan. Basta sinabi mong lahat, wala ka ng kasalanan. Acquitted ka na. Found innocent ka na. Pero, kung hindi ka state witness, mabista ka. Pagpalagay lang natin na found guilty ka, you will suffer a penalty of imprisonment of 20 to 40 years. Kaya lahanin mo yon. Mamili ka. Gusto mo na wala ka ng sala? Ayon pa sa batas yan, ha? Gusto mo na kung malakas ang ebidensya, makulong ka ng 20 to 40 years. Eh, natural, kung akusado ka, ang tao, as a natural sequence of events, will choose to become a state witness dahil wala na siyang pananagutan eh, libre pa siya. Oh, ngayon, babasahan kita ng Rules of Court na libro ko rin. Pero hindi ako libre magsabi ng gusto ko. Kung hindi, sinusunod ko sinabi ng Korte Suprema. Nakita mo itong libro na ito? Rules of Court annotated by Mirriam Santiago. At maliban dyan, 30 libro ang sinulat ko. Yan, lahat na yan. Insulto ako ng aking mga kapwa, senador.
Okay.
Mga ingitero. At nang insulto pa po, wala ako dito. Oh, nandito na ako. Abangan nyo ako mamaya. Ngayon, dito sa libro na ito, mahirap lang kasi pag nakapaligid ka ng ingkit eh. Ano nang ang hinahanap ko sa iyo? Oh well, anyway. Mario ko na lang. Sabi ng korte, rules of court. The rules of the Court of Justice. Ang akusado, hindi dapat napawalang sala. Maliban lang kung siya ang paraan para madakip at makulong ang mga talagang malaki ang kasalanan nila. Pero akusado nag-apply maging state witness, dapat he must meet 5 criteria. 5 ang listahan ng juzgado eh. Number 1, there's an absolute necessity for your testimony. Number 2, there is no direct evidence against the others. Number 3, your testimony is substantially corroborated on all important points by other witnesses. At itong pinakamahalaga, that the accused is not the most guilty. Kaya marami nagsasabi, pag umabot na sa korte at nag-apply kang maging state witness, hindi ka dapat payagan ng korteng maging state witness dahil sabi nila, ikaw ang pinaka-most guilty. Kaya importante, napapatunay mo, ngayon pa lang, sa umpisa pa lang, na hindi ikaw ang pinaka-most guilty. Dahil kung ikaw ang most guilty, hindi ka na pwedeng mag-state witness. Wala ka ng paraan na makalusot pa. Maliban lang sa kung ma-acquit ka ng korte after a full trial, no? So, lahat tayo, kung nakaharap dito sa demanda ng kamukha ng iyon na napakabigat ng parusa, ay gustuhin na lang natin mag-state witness. Kaya lang importante dyan, you should not be the most guilty. Ngayon, gusto ko lang sabihin doon sa kalaban kung kinukutya ko. Dahil sinabi ko, only the court can grant immunity. Ito, People versus Osimar, 1991. People versus Mangulabnan, 1991. People versus Armada, 1993. People versus Cordero, 1996. At isa pang buong listahan. Yun nga ang problema, pang tao, hindi nagtapos ng college. Magle-lecture sa abogada tungkol sa batas. If the ombudsman files a case in court, the prosecution is allowed to present its case. But before the prosecution rests its case, the prosecutor is allowed to file a motion with the court to order that one or more of the accused shall be discharged with his consent so that they will become state witnesses. Yun ang inasahan itong mga subordinates mo na naging whistleblowers laban sa iyo. Nagagawin silang state witness, hindi naman silang pinaka-most guilty. Kaya absuelto sila pag pinayagan sila sa korte. Hindi dito, sa korte. Absuelto sila, wala silang pananagutan. It's as if they will not even be tried. Hindi man lang yan sila bistahin eh. It's as if they went to trial and then they were pronounced to be acquitted. Ganon yun. Kaya lahat yan magiging state witness dahil wala namang limitasyon kung ilan ang state witness. There is no limit. Ibang tao, akala nila, isa lang pwedeng state witness. Hindi. Lahat pwede kung gustuhin ng korte. Kaya ikaw sana, yun din ang hangarin mo eh, na makalaya ka at wala kang pananagutan na sa batas. Pero, una, binasa ko, nirecite ko sa iyo yung 5 requirements, no? Kailangan na hindi ikaw ang most guilty. Dahil marami niniwala, ikaw ang most guilty dahil lahat ng foundations na hindi naman pala totoo, sabi nila, ay mga fake NGOs na ikaw ang nagpundar o ikaw ang nag-umpisa o ikaw ang nagpalakad o kaya they don't really exist except your say so. Kaya important, Mrs. Napoles. I will speak in Tagalog, pero masama ang Tagalog ko. Pagbigyan mo na sana ako. Napakahalaga na hindi ikaw ang pinaka-most guilty. Dahil kung most guilty ka, bibistahin ka eh. Baka you will be sentenced to 20 or 40 years, no? Wala pa naman silang naimbentong cream na will take away 20 years from your face or 40 years from your face. So malaking disgrasya yon para sa isang babae. Hindi mo naman siguro inaamin na ikaw ang most guilty. Inaamin mo bang you're the most guilty?
Hindi po.
No, of course not. Kaya, kung ayaw mong aminin na ikaw ang most guilty, dapat lang sabihin mo ngayon pa lang, sino ang most guilty sa tingin mo? Para hindi niya ilipat sa iyo yung pagka-most guilty niya. Kasi yung taong yun, nakikinig sa atin eh. Hindi nagpapakita yan eh, yan ang style niya. Pero nakikinig yan at napakaraming pera niyan. Pagkatapos nito, lakarin niya ang magalamay niya. Sisiraan niya ako, halimbawa. O pati ikaw, pasiraan ka na rin niya. Maraming gustong patayin ka eh. Kaya, tuturuan na kita bilang isang abogada na sabihin mo na ang gusto mong sabihin para hindi ka na ipapatay. Kung hindi ka pa nagsasalita, sasabi mo lang, I invoke my right against self-incrimination, baka bandang huli, down the road, magpalit ang isip mo at nagdaldal ka ng lahat. O di, panganib sila. Pero kung sabihin mo na ngayon, nawala na sila ng motibo para papatay ka dahil nandyan ang testimony mo eh. Kinukuha yan ng stenographer dito eh. And that is under oath. It is in effect an affidavit. Or maybe even a dying declaration. For all you know. Dahil a dying declaration has very strong probative value. Pag sinabi mong sa tingin ko, patayin ako ng ganyan, maski patay ka na, napakalakas ng papel o affidavit mong yan, dahil it was given in consciousness of impending death. Kaya, yun ang paliwanag ko sa iyo para mapag-isipan mo pag mag-isa ka lang. Pag pinayagan mo itong takbo ng mga pangyayari, maring lilitaw ka, you are the most guilty. Pero sabi mo, hindi ikaw most guilty at naniniwala ako sa iyo. Dahil, hindi ba, high school graduate ka, hindi ba?
Opo.
Nagpunta ka ba ng college?
Hindi po.
Hindi kaya, sa tingin ko, ng isang kamukha mo. Although, sinasabi ko even in public, na di abilidad ka talaga. May abilidad ka, your mind is very organized. But never mind that. Habang buhay ka pa, nasa panganib itong mga senador at iba pa, baka cabinet member, at lalo na yung mga congressmen na napangalanan na ng mga subordinates mo. Nasa panganib silang masira ang buhay nila, mawala ang kayamanan nila kasi kung found guilty sila of plunder, lahat ng kayamanan nila kukunin ng estado yun eh. Malaming panganib sa kanila na buhay ka. Pero kung ngayon pa lang sasabihin mo na, wala na silang motibong patayin ka pa. Dahil ang record mo ay dokumento na. Kaya mag-isip-isip ka. Sabihin mo na maaga pa. Huwag mo ipatihuli yan, ipapatay ka. These people are murderers. They're not only homicidal, they're murderers. They're planning your murder. So, ngayon pa lang, sabihin mo na, sa tingin mo, sino most guilty dito? Sa mga nasangkot?
Hindi ko po alam.
O hindi mo alam? Ako alam ko eh. Dahil, napakalawak ng sakop niya. Parang empire niya eh. Hindi naman pwede na ikaw, nanggaling ka lang sa Basilan. Hindi naman sa minamaliit ko mga taga-Basilan. But what I'm saying is, wala kang sophistication. You're not exposed to the sophisticated lifestyle of Metro Manila. Hindi ka man nag-eskwela dito sa Metro Manila. Kaya biglang sabihin ang galing ka sa mahirap na pamilya. Dahil maski taga-Basilan, Mindanao ka o doon ka sa mga malalayo na norte na probinsya, kung may kaya ang pamilya mo, talagang mag-ipon yan para makung-eskwela ka sa Metro Manila. Ikaw hindi ka man pina-eskwela dito, nagkayod ka lang sarili mo eh. Kinuha mo sa sipag at tiyaga. Ngayon, kawa ka naman na ang ginawa ng isang tao o grupo ng tao, senador man, senador. Mrs. Napoles, narinig mo ako? Senador! Kasi yan ang pinakamataas pagkatapos ng presidente. Ang vice-presidente, ang hanap buhay niya ay magantay na matiklok ang presidente. Kasunod din sa presidente, ang senador. Yun ang most powerful person. Pagkatapos niyan, ang cabinet member. Kaya, ayaw nga naman, kung pakasira ka sa kanila, na ikaw ay makukulong ka for 20 or 40 years. Dahil lang sa pinoproteksyonan mo, ang most guilty of all. Hindi mo kaya itong buong empire na ito You cannot make a pyramid out of separate bricks. Pag-isipan mo yan. Kung sa ngayon pa lang sabihin mo ng totoo, wala ka ng problema maski lumakad ka dyan. Maski lumakad ka ng hubad, walang titingin sa iyo. They won't even be interested in you. Dahil nabilin mo ng katotohanan dito sa amin So that is just the point. I'm trying very hard to belabor that particular point. Ngayon, nitong panahon na sakop ng investigasyon ng NBI, nung panahon na yon, sinong pinakamatandang senador during that time? Nung panahon na yon, covered by the NBI. Sino pinakamatanda? May matanda pa ba kay Enrile?
Hindi ko alam. Hindi ko
Yeah,
alam.
probably you don't know. But he was the oldest senator at that time. Kaya sino pa kayang pangalanan mo ng tanda? Alangan pangalanan mo itong si Senator Trillanes dahil siya ang pinakabata yata na senador. Kaya, inaangkop ang palayaw ng tao sa kanyang sitwasyon. Magiging ganon yon. Kaya kung si Enrile ang the most guilty, sabihin mo na ngayon para malibre ka na at hindi ka na niya ipapatay. Alam mo yung taong yan, pag pumunta yan sa bathroom namin dito sa aming Senator's Lounge, may gwardiya yan sa bathroom, sa kubeta, na long firearm, assault rifle. Ganon. Kaya mahirap kang, wag mong i-underestimate yung Enrile na yan. May asim pa rin si Tanda. Tapos na ako dyan. Pinapaliwanag ko lang ng buti sa iyo. Question number 3. Ang asawa mo, si Napoles, dati reservist lang yan. Nagpa-activate siya hanggang siya naging major siya, hindi ba? Nung bata pa lang kayo, 18 ka pa lang, nag-asawa ka na, kaya di ka siguro nag-eskwela sa college. Pagkatapos, natira kayo sa kampo militar at mayroon pa kayong karinderya. O kaya may binibenta kayo doon sa mga sundalo. Ganun kayo nag-umpisa, hindi ba? Kaya itong asawa mo, militar. Si Enrile, halos buong career or professional life niya, naging militar dahil Secretary of National Defense during martial law. Kaya ganyan ang ugali niyan Hanggang ngayon, akala niya, mga utusan niya at mga alipin kami. Ako yata, aliping sa gigilid. Meron aliping na mamahay or something like that. He treats us all as his slaves, as his moral and mental and intellectual slaves. Dahil nasanay siya sa mga arte at arrogance ng Secretary of National Defense during martial law. Ngayon, ang dami ng matapang. Ang dami nang nanginsulto kay President Marcos. Nung panahon na yun, katakot lang nila kay President Marcos. Kitang-kita ko Isa na si Enrile. Dahil assistant ako ng Secretary of Justice. Kung minsan natutuwa siya sa akin, pinapaupo niya ako doon sa cabinet meeting para makita ko may tsura ng ibang cabinet. Meron isang cabinet member doon na pag sinabi ni Marcos, itong tatanong sa iyo, nanginginig ka agad. Kaya di ako takot ngayon. Halos buong yatang buhay ng mister mo ay naging major siya hanggat sa nag-retire na siya, no? Nagkakilala ba sila ni Senator Enrile? Nung si Enrile ay Secretary of National Defense or kailanman? Answer.
Hindi po.
Hindi sila magkakilala.
Opo.
Meron silang mutual friends.
Hindi po. Wala po.
Hindi rin. Pero itong si Jaime, na asawa mo, kasangkot iyan sa military coup d'etat ng pangalan nun ay God Save the Queen, parang papatalsik si President Cory Aquino. Hindi ba totoo yan?
Hindi ko po alam.
Ay, hindi mo alam. Nag-asawa kang tao, hindi po alam?
Ay, hindi. Alam ko nagkutita po, pero hindi ko alam kung ano yung mga...
Ay, kung di ka alam mo, kasama siya doon.
Opo, syempre command, kung anong utos ng command, di ba? Sinunod nila, pero wala akong alam mga kung anong queen hong pamagat, hindi ko po alam.
Okay. Basta mayroon siyang, nasangkot siya sa kudeta. Nakulong ba siya doon?
Hindi po.
Hindi siya nakulong?
Opo.
Hindi siya nakulong kasama ni Senator Hunasan?
Ay, hindi po.
Ah, hindi totoo yan. Okay. Next question. Ang legal counsel mong si Rene Villa. Interesanto ito ah. Nagbasa ko ng ganito kakapal niyang biodata. I have to say that I've never met a biodata with such unparalleled mediocrity. Oh, sabi nitong Rene Villa, na taga Iloilo yan pero hindi ko kakilala. He said, naging abogado mo, totoo ba yun?
Opo.
And then he said, nagyaman ka, hindi dahil dito sa mga NGOs, kung hindi dahil sa iyong international trade.
Opo, sa Indonesia.
Ayon lang, yung coal mining sa Indonesia. Yun lang yun.
Opo, tsaka sa iba pa po.
Ah, mayroon pa iba. Pero yung coal mining sa Indonesia, hindi nagtagumpay yon, hindi pa? Or hindi natuloy?
Yung tinayo nil bago, pero yung dati pa po, ongoing pa po.
At nag-isip ka pa ng trading of carbon credits. Totoo ba yon?
Opo.
Sinong kausap mo sa trading of carbon credits?
Sa US po.
Ah, sa Amerika naman.
Opo.
Ang dami, international personality ka pala. Ang dami mong kausap ah. At ito palagi ang abogado mo. Ngayon, para mo malaman, no? Para hindi mo ako i-underestimate. Nang nag-doctorate ako, kumuha ako ng subject ng international trade law. Walang kabuhay-buhay ang subject na yan. Konting-konti lang kami yung kumukuha. Dahil puno yan ng tariffs, duties, limited resources of the sea and how to apportion them to states, mga away ng mga estado tungkol sa mga unfair competition practices and so on. It's a very highly technical subject. Kaya, dahil sa nakakuha ko ng international trade law, nakipagkaibigan ako sa mga Pilipinong sikat na yun ang kanilang espesyalidad. Ang pinakauna nating eksperto sa international trade law ay si former Chief Justice, si former Supreme Court Justice Florentino Feliciano. Dahil naging member pa yan ng International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea. Pagkatapos, si Chief Justice Lourdes Sereno, yun ang kabisado nilang international trade law na yan. Pero kailanman sa buong buhay ko, hindi ko narinig na mayroon palang eksperto na international trade law ng pangalan niya si Rene Villa. Ngayon, ito bang si Rene Villa na kinuha mong abogado mo ay nag-graduate with honors ba ito? Di ba alam o ano?
Hindi ko po alam.
Alright. Kumuha ba ng masters yan sa law?
Hindi ko pa rin alam.
Oh, paano lang ngayon in-advertise ang sarili niyang he's daw an expert in international trade law? Ulit nagtrabaho sa Kuwait, sa Jeddah, at sa Saudi Arabia. In other words, he's just an OFW masquerading as an international trade lawyer. OFW lang siya eh. Ah, pagkatapos sabi niya, kasi mga negosyo ni Mrs. Napoles doon sa Indonesia, doon sa international trade credits, ako ang nag-advise sa kanya. Pero hindi ko alam kung magkano talaga ang pag-aari niya. Hindi ko alam kung ilan ang bangko niya. Hindi niya alam. Pasikat mo tao eh. According to the Securities and Exchange Commission, number of houses owned, 28. Totoo ba yan?
Hindi po.
Oh, ilan ang bahay mo? Tatatlo?
Oh.
Ay, kukunti naman masyado. Eh, nasaan itong the others?
Ma'am, may kaso na po kami sa NBI. Sa NBI, sorry po, sa BIR. So,
So,
doon na lang po namin sasagutin, ma'am. Sorry
basta,
po.
Okay, it's alright. Number of vehicles owned according to Justice Department, 30. All registered under the JLN Group of Companies or JLN Corporation. Totoo ba yun?
Hindi po.
Oh, ilan lang ang sasakyan mo?
7 po.
7 lang? Number of accounts with banks, 415 accounts with 17 different banks. Ilan lahat?
Hindi po, pero I invoke my right to dahil thank you po. Pero hindi ganun
Alright. Na-exaggerate. No? Pero, sa lahat nito, hindi intindi ito ni Rene Villa who claims to be your lawyer. International trade lawyer daw siya. Ulit naging OFW. Ay di lahat palang mga kasapi ng pamilya natin na OFW, pwede na sila ngayon tawagin ng mga human resource experts or management experts, kung ganyan rin lang, no? Yung abogado mong yon, just pitsoso ako doon. Sayang ilong ko pa man din. Catholic ties mo. Is it true that you are close to the former parish priest of Quiapo Church?
Opo.
Yes. So, tinuruan ka niya o sarili mo, alam mo ang 10 Commandments, hindi ba?
Opo.
Oh, huwag ko nang iparecite sa iyo. Pero, may commandment, you shall not steal. Isn't that so? Tama ba ako?
Opo, ma'am.
Oh, naniwala ka bang tama yon?
Opo.
And yet you steal. Oh, anong klaseng katoliko ka? Ngayon, are you familiar with the commandment, you shall not tell a lie?
Opo.
Oh, ngayon lang nagsisinungaling ka sa akin eh.
And
And still, with a plunder case against you, you remain and consider yourself to be a devout Catholic? Ikaw ba'y debotado pa rin katoliko?
Opo.
Ay, maniwala ka na lang, magdasal ka na lang ng Diyos pag namatay tayong lahat ay katoliko. Dahil napakahirap i-forgive yung mga kasalanan na pinagbibintang sa pinto mo. Ngayon, question 6. Ito medyo may pagkaligal, no? Mr. Chair, I will try and be very brief because I'm very conscious that I'm using borrowed time. Perpetuation of testimony. Sinabi ko na sa iyo na ang daming senador, ang daming cabinet members, ang daming congressmen who are murderous. They're not just homicidal. They feel like murdering you. Gusto nilang patayin ka. Kasi yan sa utak mong yan, nandyan ang pagkakasira ng kanilang mga hindi lamang kayamanan, buhay nila, masisira, pati pamilya nila. Kaya importante na masara, na malagyan ng duct tape, yung electrician's tape, ang bibig mo. Yun ang pinapaalala ko sana sa iyo. Alam mo yan, kasi pag pumunta ka dito balot na balot ka, hindi mo makita ang mukha mo. At kaya ulitin ko na naman itong punto na ito. Kung sabihin mo ba, ngayon pa lang, ang totoo, mamaya sa aking mga kapwa senador, di wala ka ng problema. Nalaman na ang totoo bakit ka pa nila patayin? Hindi naman mamatay ang testigo mo. Well, anyway. Ngayon, pero, dahil sa pinag-initan ka, pwede na maghingi ka ng protection sa ating rules of court. Yung librong pinakita ko kanina, under Rule 134, tawag doon, perpetuation of testimony. Ibig sabihin, ang testimonya mo o yung kwento mo sa korte, kung anong nangyari, magiging permanente yon, maski wala ka na. Perpetuation of testimony. Una, mag-file ka ng petition sa korte. Pag umabot ka sa korte, na kamo, gusto ko sana na hindi na ako pahintayin pa sa bista na ito. Kung hindi, gusto ko nang sabihin ng aking testimonya o
The 36th session of the Senate, in the first regular session of the 16th Congress, is hereby called to order. Senator Gregorio B. Honasan, the second, will lead the chamber in prayer. Senator Honasan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Father Almighty, during challenging times, we humbly ask for your help and mercy. Thank you, Father, for the gift of life and our true legacy, our children. Protect us from fear, worry, sickness, and doubt. In this time of extraordinary trials, help us rise above our limitations, that we may truly put others before ourselves. And most of all, help us to be faithful to you, our nation, and all we hold dear. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will now call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Cayetano Alan Pedro Compañero S, Cayetano Pia S, Defensor Santiago, De Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, O, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Rillanes, Villar, Senate President Drilon.
17 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of the House.
Majority Leader, good afternoon, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 35th Session, December 3, 2013, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion of the Majority Leader is hereby carried.
Mr. President, at this point, with your permission, I'd just like to acknowledge the presence and the honor of having the President of the Autonomous Region of Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, His Excellency Honorable Dr. John Momis, and his spouse, Madam Elizabeth Momis, is here with us today.
We make of record the presence of our visitors. Welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, may we also put on record the presence of the faculty of the PLM, led by Dean Elena Cernias, Dean Graduate School of Management, Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila.
The presence of our guests are made of record. Welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, lastly, the members of the Vice Mayor's League of Batangas, especially Senator Recto, is welcoming them, and the rest of the Senate. Please stand to be recognized also.
Vice Mayors of Batangas are recognized. The presence are made of record.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Bills on first reading. Senate number 1987 entitled An Act Establishing the Bacol Central Visayas Commission.
With permission of the Chamber,
Over 200 pages, pinpointing Enrile as the mastermind of plunder. That official memorandum validates the charge I aired in the latest hearing of the Blue Ribbon Committee, where I first made that very same accusation based on the lawyer's thought process of enlightened skepticism. If he smarted against the accusation, I really could have requested for an additional hearing where he could be personally present and interpolate Janet Napoles, who appears to be his BFF, his best friend forever. But he chooses to keep away and to keep silent because he's immobilized by fear and humiliation. Instead of presenting evidence to the public of his hypocritical protestations of innocence, and really once again chose to steer public attention to what he hopes will be a diversion. The lies and black propaganda hurled against me during the 1992 presidential campaign. This man, contrary to logic and common sense, hopes to evade criminal prosecution and public outrage over his plunder by resurrecting campaign dirt against me, which are over 21 years old. Dimon Old Man, also known as Tanda, who next month, 2 months away, will be 90 years old. And he tried to portray me in the blackest terms. He pointedly ignored the fact that I am a laureate of the Nobel Prize of Asia, the 1988 Magsaysay Award for Government Service. According to the official citation, the award, quote, recognizes her bold and moral leadership in cleaning up a graft-ridden government agency, unquote. Media has noted that I am reportedly, quote, the most awarded Filipino public official, unquote, because I won such awards as Sounds and UP's most outstanding law alumnus. And it had never reached these levels of professional recognition. bringing parliamentary debate to the lowest level. It is a violation of every canon of civility and decency in public discourse. Parliamentary rules strictly forbid arguments ad hominem, but my attacker delivered an entire speech by appealing to personal prejudices rather than to reason, and by attacking my character rather than my assertion that he is a mastermind of plunder. In fact, my attacker is guilty of violating the Senate rules. Rule 34, Section 94, quote, no senator under any circumstances, I supply the emphasis, under any circumstances shall use offensive or improper language against another senator or against any public institution, unquote. Under Rule 34, he has committed the offense of unparliamentary acts and language, and I shall charge him with disorderly behavior with the Ethics of the Rules Committee, punishable by suspension for 60 days. And really, total lack of credibility. My attacker is this icon of shameless lying. Under President Ferdinand Marcos, he claimed that as Defense Secretary, he was ambushed, thus laying the ground for the imposition of martial law. Under President Corazon Aquino, he retracted and admitted that his ambush was fake and staged. Then, under President Benigno Aquino III, he retracted again. He now claims in his memoirs that the ambush was genuine after all. He eats his own words for breakfast. In the law of evidence, he has absolutely no credibility. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one thing, false in all things. The Supreme Court has ruled, quote, for evidence to be believed, it must not only proceed from the mouth of a credible witness, but must be credible in itself, such as the common experience and observation of mankind can prove as probable under the circumstances, unquote. People v. Loriega, 326 CRA, 675, 2000. Enrique's bungled attempt at revisionist history and his blatant disinformation has been widely condemned by all sectors of society, particularly in social media. The man is an incorrigible liar and criminal, as brought out by the litany of his crimes against the Filipino people. Accordingly, I respectfully urge the Justice Secretary to order an immediate and exhaustive investigation into the following crimes, among others, under the Penal Code committed by Enrile. Number 1, command responsibility for death and disappearance during martial law. In 2012, the Communist Party of the Philippines sent an email to media with the following condemnation of Enrile as delusional in his notorious memoirs. Quote, Enrile was Marcos's hatchet man and the one who signed countless warrants that led to the capture and detention of thousands of farmer leaders, workers, students, activists in the church, and other critics and opponents of martial law. Enrile's hands are forever stained with the blood of close to 4,000 people. 4,000 people died who were salvaged during Marcos's reign of terror. Enrile exposed himself as a liar, unquote. Inquirer Visayas, 10 October 2012. During martial law, Enrile was the almighty Defense Secretary when I was appointed the youngest RTC judge in the Mecca of Judges, Metro Manila, serving in Quezon City. In 1985, when gasoline prices went up, some 50 students from Ateneo and UP joined a street demonstration in Cubao to protest the martial law regime. Most of them were seniors scheduled to take their final exams and to graduate from college. Enrile ordered the military to arrest the students on the basis of martial law presidential decree that defined the crime of illegal assembly as any gathering opposed to the administration and that imposed the death penalty. I was assigned to the case. I suspended trial in all other cases and continuously heard the illegal assembly case morning, afternoon, and evening. The issue was, does martial law automatically cancel the right to bail? My decisive answer was no, and I ordered the release of the students. However, the military defied my release order, and in fact, filed a second charge of inciting to sedition against the students. The accused appeared, and the Supreme Court in effect upheld me. case of Roca Cervantes et al. Versus Enrile Ramos et al. 192 Scra 183, 1990. From the very beginning, Enrile has always resented the Supreme Court decision and held it against me for refusing to kowtow to him even during the dark days of martial law when he swaggered around town as if he owned it. The Supreme Court slapped him down, ruling, quote, that the criminal proceedings had become a case of persecution, having been undertaken by state officials in bad faith, unquote. The court pointed a finger at Enrile and criticized, quote, respondents' bad faith and malicious intent, unquote. The court warned Enrile that he did not have, quote, a license to run roughshod over a citizen's basic constitutional rights, such as due process, or manipulate the law to suit dictatorial tendencies, unquote. This was and remains Enrile's arrogant, tyrannical attitude to young people, persecution, bad faith, malice, and dictatorship. He has never changed. Number 2, mastermind of the biggest plunder case in Philippine history. In June 2013, the Department of Budget and Management released statistics showing that in a 5-year period for 2005 to 2013, Enrile was the biggest recipient of pork barrel, amounting to a total 1.189 billion pesos. According to whistleblowers, Enrile gave the syndicates of dummy NGOs run by Janet Napoles access to his pork barrel in no less than 22 instances. 22 kabesas ginawa niya. In all, Enrile reportedly gave 641.65 million pesos from his pork barrel funds to dummy corporations founded by Napoles. Merlina Sunyas, a whistleblower, testified that Napoles personally talked to the senator concerned or the chief of staff. Sunyas also testified that in 2012, her dummy foundation received 5 million pesos in pork barrel funds from Enrile. The Commission on Audit issued a PDAF report that in 2011, Enrile was one of 4 government officials who gave some 206 pesos million in pork barrel funds to the Department of Agriculture to a questionable NGO from 2009 to 2010. The Inquirer story said, quote, Enrile withheld further comment until he had checked his records, unquote. Until now, Enrile has clung to his right to remain silent, posing a group of netizens to start a movement called Kumibo Ka Naman Enrile, with the acronym KKNE, or pronounced Kine. In the midst of all the damning evidence against him, Enrile has cowered like a mouse. He could very well have delivered a privileged speech proving his innocence. Instead, his speech was directed at me, rehashing black propaganda against me during the 1992 presidential campaign. Yun na lang ba ang pagkagawa niya? You will remember that I led in the counting for the first 5 days, but thereafter was cheated of the presidency. I filed an election protest, but it was dismissed by the Supreme Court on the technicality that I had already been elected as senator. So that issue has never been settled. He is silent on the evidence, but voluble on malice. His speech amounted to verbal violence and a woman lying in her sickbed, while he preened in the Senate, demonstrating his skills as a drama king of corrupt politics. Number 3, king of a smuggling empire. In 1995, the Representative Enrile, native Gonzaga, Cagayan, authored RA number 7922, creating the Cagayan Economic Zone Authority, or CESA. Section 6, paragraph F, gives to CESA the right, quote, to operate tourism-related activities, including games, amusements, recreational and sports facilities, such as horse racing, dog racing, gambling casinos, golf courses, and others, under priorities and standards set by CESA, unquote. The free port occupies 441,000 hectares, an area almost 3 times the size of Quezon City. And he claimed that the port would become the hub in Southeast Asia of interactive gaming. His term for gambling on the internet, shipping, and ecotourism. The Port Irene CEO is Enrile's relative, Jose Marie Ponce. According to Enrile himself, his representative in his port is his son-in-law, James Coacher, an American who, according to former U.S. Ambassador Chris smuggling, unquote. Released by WikiLeaks on U.S. Embassy Cable 8, Manila 1417, sent by Kenny to the U.S. Department of State on 13 June 1998. Enrile, according to the cable, presided at the Senate hearing and indulged himself by repeatedly and fiercely shouting at representatives of the Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce because the foreign businessmen had complained about smuggling in Port Irene. On 12 December 2002, President Gloria Arroyo issued Executive Order number 156, imposing a partial ban on the importation of used cars. In the 2000 case of Executive Secretary B. Southwing, in effect, the Supreme Court upheld the validity of the ban. And in the 2013 case of Executive Secretary V. Forerunner, the Supreme Court again upheld the validity of the law. During all this time, in open defiance of the Supreme Court rulings banning importation of used cars, CESA continued its operations, its importations. In 2012, car traders imported some 5,400 vehicles contained in 18 shipments. In February 2013, a Japanese cargo ship set off for Port Irene with a shipment of Hummers, Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes-Benzes, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, and other used luxury cars. The government refused to issue clearance for registration of the shipments, and CESA was forced to re-export those used cars. Presumably, because of all the illegal shenanigans in Port Irene, just last month, here, in the Senate, Senator Sergio Osmeña, Chair of Subcommittee B of the Finance Committee, recommended a cut from the CESA budget of 800 million pesos. On Enrile's appeal, Osmeña agreed to restore this amount of nearly 1 billion pesos subject to certain conditions. That's how much of the taxpayers' money go to finance Enrile's smuggling empire. Bakit tayo magbabayad? Ito pamagitan ating voice para kumita itong smuggler na ito. Number 4, anticipated king of gambling empire. CESA operates online gaming outside the jurisdiction of PAGCOR. The Cagayan Ecozone is the only ecozone in the country that is allowed by the Enrile law to host and issue online gambling licenses to offshore companies. Matinik, mag-isa lang siya sa buong Pilipinas na merong ganon. Such foreigners are not required to live in our country or to incorporate as a Filipino company. They only need an interactive gaming license and to register as a CESA enterprise. Jesus Dicini, president of the Internet and Society Program of the UP College of Law, has already warned that CESA should exercise due diligence in giving out licenses which may be exploited by unscrupulous entities. He said that CESA might unwittingly give these companies the legitimacy to operate legally. Just last month, Inquirer columnist Ramon Tulfo reported that police raided and arrested some 700 persons, including some expatriates, in their Makati and Quezon City offices. Allegedly, the firms were operating under license from First Cagayan License and Resort Corporation in CESA. Source, Inquirer, 22 November 2013 at A-24. Last February 2013, the CESA administrator admitted that he has awarded what he calls a master license to First Cagayan to operate internet gambling. The master license allows First Cagayan to issue 7-year licenses to foreign entities to operate online gambling in this country. So far, it appears that it has awarded licenses to 7 foreign corporations, but it claims that it can issue as many licenses as it wants. Galing. The favored corporations pay annual fees of $40,000, admitting that only the Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, or PAGCOR, has been given the mandate to operate legal gambling in the country. I repeat, only PAGCOR, under law, can operate legal gambling in our country. CESA claims that it gives licenses only to foreign-based corporations. Naghanap ng lusot. Lahat kailangan sumunod, maliban lang kay Enrile. In brief, CESA promotes online gambling, or what it calls interactive gambling, which has been described as, quote, a lucrative niche market, unquote. It has partnered with telecommunications companies to offer, quote, high quality, high speed internet connectivity, unquote. The CESA administrator has boasted abroad that First Cagayan, quote, offers state-of-the-art internet data center facilities in Cagayan and also in Manila, unquote, and that there is, quote, direct connectivity to the US and Europe. Aba, ang galing. Global gambling lord na siya ngayon. Source, online gambling hub, sprouts north of Philippines by Melvin Kalinag, news by 25 February 2013. 5. King of martial law, illegal logging empire. During martial law, the largest logging concession covering, hold your breath, 95,770 hectares was awarded to Enrile as owner of San Jose Lumber. His license expired in 2007. His illegal logging operations were reportedly protected by the Lost Command, headed by renegade then PC Colonel Carlos Ledesma, also known as Commander Proceso. The logging concession shared a border with Barangay Sagpod, Las Navas town in northern Samar. In September 1981, the Lost Command allegedly figured in the massacre of 45 people. May I request, please, the media, to give room for the students so that they can see me while I go to number 6, prime number 6. I give the students for the gallery permission to stand up so they can see me. Because your vision is now so obstructed that I have no choice. You have to see me when I say this. Number 6, psychopathic, hypersexualized, social, serial womanizer. On 30 January 1998, the Chicago Tribune reported on Enrile, quote, the senator in his early 70s and rumored to be a multimillionaire was a defense minister under Marcos but helped to bring down a dictator. His wife, Christina, a socialite, walked out on him this month after charging adultery. The other woman is reported to be Gigi Gonzalez Reyes, chief of staff of his Senate office and about 30 years his junior, unquote. Christina was reported as saying, quote, in the Chicago Tribune, quote, that she no longer could tolerate his chasing after other women, including domestic helpers, cooks, and assistants. For emphasis, he's chasing after other women, including domestic helpers, cooks, and assistants. Walang pinapatawad ito. Kaya ayaw kong tumabi sa kanya, baka mamaya na-HIV ako. This is eyewitness testimony that Enrile is psychopathic and urgently needs treatment for his sex addiction. There's a sex addict in the Senate, if you don't know. In an interview with Enrile on 25 January 2012, the Inquirer said that after Gigi earned her law degree in 1988, she joined Enrile law firm. At that time, Gigi was married to lawyer Rodolfo Inky Reyes. Enrile caused Inky to be appointed to the CESA, located at the northeastern tip of Luzon mainland, about 620 kilometers north of Manila. Sinidyos niyang babae, ang laki pinapunta niya doon sa malayo. Dinagiwalay, the Reyes couple eventually separated. At one point in his glittering career as Senate President, Enrile had the audacity to throw a birthday party at a 5-star Makati hotel for his concubine. Nag-birthday party para sa kirida niya. To which he was able to drag President Aquino. Photos of the decadent party were splashed in the front pages of top newspapers. And this libertine pontificates about morality? To win the so-called Catholic vote, he pretended to be a determined enemy of the reproductive health law. All to naught because his son, whom he groomed to take over the family's fabulous financial empire, was convincingly defeated at the last Senate elections despite reported campaign expenses of 150.797 million pesos, the highest expense of any senatorial candidate. Gigi, together with Enrile, has been charged with plunder and has fled abroad. In her absence, the Enrile camp issued a statement that only Gigi, not Enrile, should be accused of plunder. That is his version of tough love. Number 7, Enrile in his 2012 SALN, Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth, underdeclared his net worth at only 118 million. Despite all his posturing, Enrile's specialty is only tax law. Akala mo alam ng lahat, tax law pala ang specialty niya. Hence, all his properties are either abroad, in the name of others, or in the name of corporations. In 1975, during martial law, he built a residence in exclusive Dasmariñas village. 2 years later, he built a house in Valle Verde, registered in the name of Jaca Investments Corporation, his family firm. In 1985, he built a huge beach house in his prime beachfront property in Atipuan, Cebu, Batangas. But in his Psalm 2012, belying his wanton lifestyle, including corrupt minions and a private army on his payroll, he declared a net worth of only 118 million. His legal expertise is obviously tax evasion. Ombudsman resolution this month will decide the truth. Enrile and I are engaged in an epic battle to reveal the truth to the Filipino people. On my side, I have university students, social media netizens, Metro Manila and Visayan communities, and the crowds in the major shopping malls who instantly gather and urge me to continue the good fight. On his side, he has the corrupt journalists. In his payroll, corrupt military officials who constitute his private army, his minions in the Customs Bureau and the Internal Revenue Bureau, both of which he used to head and considered to be his five dams, as well as his key appointed officials in local government and the diplomatic service who serve as his sycophantic spies. Mag-ingat kayo mga senador, lalo na pag pumunta kayo sa Hong Kong, pagbaba nyo ng aeroplano, salubong kayo ng protocol officer, ang isa dyan, espiyan niya. Dating military officer, ngayon protocol officer na. Alam pong pangalan noon. I hope that this clash of titans in the Senate will lead to an Armageddon in Philippine politics. By the end of December, the Ombudsman will resolve whether to dismiss the plunder case or to file a complaint for plunder with anti-graft court known as Sandigan Bayan. If the Ombudsman files a case in court, Mr. Enrile will automatically be suspended from the Senate by order of the Sandigan Bayan. During trial, he will likely remain in detention because he would have no constitutional right to bail, particularly if the court finds the evidence of guilt is strong. If convicted, he will be jailed for 30 years, 30, and his ill-gotten wealth, expected to be in the billions, will be forfeited in favor of the state. Because he's over 70 years old, he can plead the mitigating circumstance of age in order to lower the sentence. Also, because of his age, he can apply for executive clemency. But it is not true that his advanced age exempts him from criminal liability. He has to pay for his sins unless he turns state witness and rats on Senator Jingoy Estrada, Senator Bong Revilla, and his other co-accused in the plunder case. After his poisonous personal attacks against me, Enrile expects that I shall be cowed into silence by usual bluff and bluster. That is not going to happen. Now, Enrile should get real. In Cagayan, it is said, I purposely direct myself to my student audience. In Cagayan, it is said that when Enrile was a baby, his mother dropped him on his head. Nahulog na sanggol. Tumama ang ulo sa sahig, kaya ganyan yung taong yan. Now he is the poster boy of stem cell treatment that has long gone past its expiry date. Lumampas na, kaya bumalik na sa natural. He looks like a female llama, surprised in her bath. Ang female llama, miniature na camel, her body is all twisted and she has a very mean and violent temper. Ganun ang itsura niya. He reminds me of nothing so much as a dead fish before it has time to stiffen. If he has the courage, he should switch places with me. He should be funny and I'll be the asshole. For the most apt description of this damaged creature, I quote, this is a quotation. For years, I've regarded his very existence as a monument to all the rancid genes and broken chromosomes that corrupt the possibility of the Filipino dream. He was a foul creature of himself, caricature of himself, a man with no soul, no inner convictions, with integrity of a hyena and the style of a poisoned toad. His charges are 20 years old. The Prince of Darkness, having no means of demolishing innocent, law-abiding, God-fearing people like me, has recycled rumors against me that were aired and which I answered more than 20 years ago when I ran for president. Maybe he's suffering from age-appropriate dementia again. Mr. Dementia tries in his clumsy way to raise suspicions about my mental health. I appear frequently on TV, and I'm widely exposed in other media. And yet, despite the repeated innuendos during election campaigns, the Filipinos have elected and re-elected me to the Senate. Most recently, I was elected by the UN General Assembly to be judge of the International Criminal Court. I will be the first Filipino there. I was elected #1 judge, a tribute to my country, and the result of a demanding schedule of lectures by me and questions from the audience to separate gatherings of UN delegates grouped in geographical order. By comparison, Enrile with his external philandering and unexplained wealth desperately needs a shrink as a mental health measure. His mind is sit, 3 times sit, to use the language of Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games Catching Fire. Yan o. Yan, 3 times sit ka. At para lalang sigurado, ito. He violated the law when he tried to pressure my husband, then a customs collector, to release a smuggled Toyota car, forfeited for failure to pay correct customs duties and charges. Forfeited na, ha? At that time, the policy of the Bureau of Customs was to forfeit smuggled cars and to use them as official vehicles for authorized senior staff. That was a policy of the Bureau. My husband was only one of the many staff who earned this privilege by exemplary work, evidenced by annual certificates of commendation issued by the Customs Commissioner. Marami sila. Nung panahon na iyon, pag smuggled ang kotse, pino-forfeit. Ibig sabihin, tapos ng proceedings. Pinukuha na ng gobyerno at pinamimigay sa mga senior staff para maging official vehicles nila at makapagtipid sila. And yet, and really, zeroed in only on my husband. Hindi niya in-attack yung policy na yon. Ang atake niya, yung husband ko solo. Hindi naman mag-isa siyang nakatanggap ng Toyota eh. At Toyota pa man din. I really kept threatening to oppose my confirmation as Agrarian Reform Secretary unless my husband released the smuggled car to the smuggler. Kaya nag-abogado pala para sa smuggler. As a former Customs Commissioner, I really wanted to bend the law for his legal clients. In time, my husband and other senior staff returned the smuggled cars to the BOC. I owned and drove a Mercedes when I was a trial judge. Enile's charge that I registered the smuggled car in my name in Tarlac is inane, the product of his febrile imagination. Nalagdat ka kasi palagi eh. Tumigil ka na nga ng pagkahabol sa mga babae para gumaling ka. My husband already owned and drove a Ford Mustang sports car as a senior in law school. This sale of a Toyota is a non-issue. Bakit kami hahabol ng Toyota? Di Mercedes na ako. Asawa ko, estudyante pa lang sa UP College of Law, naka-Toyota Mustang na. In his speech, as is his annoying habit, Enrile praised himself by boasting of his alleged martial arts prowess, which he has never displayed. Magaling daw siya. Eksperto daw siya sa martial arts. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi natin nakikita yung martial arts niyang pinagmamalaki. He also boasted of his high grade in the bar exam with a non-sequitur that I had a low grade. Abay, gusto pala niyang magpakasikat? Bakit maghahanap pa siya ng taong aapakan niya para sumikat siya? In UP at that time, many of our professors taught us to devote ourselves to the Socratic method and pay no attention to the bar, which they belittled. I paid no attention. wanted to do, contrary to my father's wishes at that time, was to avail of a rare scholarship in Moscow, which was a no-zone country insofar as Philippine foreign policy was concerned. In the United States, the bar exam is considered clerical. Any dean of admission of a top law school ignores any claim by Filipino applicants of achievement in the bar exams, and I'm surprised when an applicant from the Philippines puts it in his resume. Instead, the criteria of choice is membership in the Law Journal, which is the acid test of academic excellence in America and Europe. Emilio demands that I should answer the charges of his attack dog, former Senator Pinky Lacson. Mr. Dementia has forgotten that the Senate Legal Office this year promptly upheld me in a written opinion. The Senate, as a matter of policy, allows senators to maintain satellite offices in premises owned by the senator. That is official Senate policy. That is found in the legal opinion of the Senate Legal Office after this charge was made against me. The legal opinion revealed that the amount I charged, 70,000 pesos, 70,000 pesos monthly for 403 square meters on the 4th floor of the office building. Never raised from the time I first became senator until now, 70,000 nababayad ng Senado para sa 400 square meters, and that is an office building. Hindi naman bahay ko yan, hindi naman garahe ko yan, kamukha ng ginawa ng ibang senador. Office building yan, registered and taxes paid as an office and commercial building. It's one of the lowest in the Senate. The other charge is that I own the multipurpose hall of the Rizal provincial government. Together with a few other senators, I gave a modest amount of pork barrel to help fund its construction undertaken by the Rizal provincial government. This charge is asinine. Lacson, like his mastermind, seems to be approaching dementia too. Biro mo, pag-aari ko raw ang Rizal Provincial Multipurpose Hall. Niregister ko daw sa Tarlac, hindi naman ako taga-Tarlac. Ang isang Toyota, na ako ng registered owner ng isang Mercedes. Anong klaseng isipan itong mga ito? Let me tell you about the real Lacson. As PNP chief, he coveted the post of DILG secretary, which at that time was occupied by Ronaldo Puno. In his overwhelming desire to become Interior Secretary, Lacson gathered an incriminating file of documents showing that Puno ordered all policemen nationwide to take a drug test, but only with a certain specific laboratory, which turned out to be a small, cheap apartment. Lahat ng kapulisan sa buong bansa gusto ng DILG at that time na kumuha ng drug test na babayaran nila. Doon, na hinanap ng media at pinakita sa telebisyon, yun palang laboratory na yon, hindi man lang pala office building yan, apartment, na luma na. The cunning and scheming Lacson gave me the file. I exposed the corrupt scandal and engaged in a bitter word war with Puno, who hired a lawyer for the sole purpose of character assassination against me. During this time of poisonous hostilities, mostly fought in media, Lacson hopped on a plane to Hong Kong in order to avoid any suspicion of complicity in the expose. Binigyan niya ako ng papel para ma-skandalo ang boss niya na gusto niyang palitan at nagtago doon sa Hong Kong habang inatake ako ng kanyang boss. What a jerk. He returned after it was all over and Puno had been damaged. His cowardly retreat from this proxy battle is a standard joke in gatherings of his classmates at the Philippine Military Academy. Marami pa akong kwento tungkol kay Lacson, but it's not that time. Why is it really so close to Lacson? When a Manila Regional Trial Court issued a warrant of arrest against Lacson, he jumped bail and became a fugitive from justice. Nagtago yan eh. May warrant of arrest against him. Lahat tayo, pag na-warrant of arrest, kailangan mag-surrender ka sa korte, ikukulong ka. Maliban lang kung makapagpiyansa ka. Pero siya, hindi. Natakot agad ng nagtago. That is a crime in itself. TV repeatedly showed a footage of Lacson leaving the airport. Paulit-ulit. Umalis daw ng bansa. Si Lacson napakita doon sa airport. But many believe that Enrile provided safe haven in Cagayan to Lacson. That is why these two men are so close. They only, and can only be in disaster relief efforts in the Visayas. Yun ang maging platform niya para maging presidential candidate siya in 2016. Malacanang issued the appointment just to abort the endless stream of his self-serving press releases whenever there was a vacancy in customs, immigration, or even in the non-vacant post of anti-crime czar already held by the executive secretary. His latest caper took his campaign at self-projection to the level of the absurd when his own press release reported that a former policeman, pulis lang, he allegedly delivered a lecture on constitutional law as part of Enila's effort to shift attention from PDAF to DAP. Challenge to public debate. After this speech, I respectfully declined to yield the floor for interpellation. I rose to answer the personal attack against me, and interpellation will merely serve to waste the time of the Senate. I shall also leave immediately after the speech with your indulgence, Mr. President and colleagues in the Senate, because I am ill with chronic fatigue syndrome. In conclusion, as I did in the past, I challenge Enrile to a public televised debate on the plundered charge against him, face to face. Huwag kang mag-upa ng attack dog mo. Ikaw ang humarap sa akin. Tayong dalawa. Doon sa UP, dahil pareho tayong UP graduate. Sumagot ka! A televised debate on the plundered charge against him, including his illegal and immoral use of the Senate President's discretionary fund to distribute nearly 2 million pesos as Christmas bonus last year to each senator, except for 4 senators, whom he considers his political enemies, led by me. It should be held at the UP Malcolm here in the College of Law, and only students with valid IDs should be allowed to prevent Enrile from renting a partisan crowd. The first time I challenged Enrile to a debate, he declined, and instead called on Lacson to shower me with near illiterate insults, including an oxymoron. If this second time Enrile again evades debate, this will be an admission that he is the mastermind of the plunder of some 10 billion pesos of the taxpayers' money, and that is insulting me on a personal level, not on the level of principles or policies, but on a personal, prohibited level. He's insulting me on a personal level as a diversionary tactic and as a smokescreen for his criminality. No matter how devilish his power, and no matter how fabulous his ill-gotten wealth, I refuse to be coerced by Enrile. Justice should be done though the heavens fall. I am fortified by my faith. According to the poet, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Thank you.
Majority Leader,
Mr. President, may I request a 1-minute suspension?
suspended 1 minute.
Ayan, salamat. Good morning, Juan. MM24, may galap shoutout yan. Thank you. Natapos din ang tagal. Kala ko ay hindi siya mahaba pala yun. Ayan, naka 1 hour completion. 1 hour 30 minutes, sala del S. Sabi ko 30 minutes lang eh. Ang haba pala ng speech. Yan, buong buo. Buong buo. Kay Mirriam, nakakamiss din ah. Alright, thank you very much. Ako yung mag-end na. Thank you. For the WH lang to. Salamat. Bye-bye. Thank you.